and when I tell you a film tries so hard to be edgy and it doesn't work, this is the prime example. What's going on, you guys? James here with a little fun video I wanted to do because there's not much news happening and there aren't many new movies to review. So let's just go through my top 5 best and worst of 2020. Y'all, this is gonna be so fun because there are really good movies that have come out in 2020, and I know that all the theaters, especially here in the US, have been shut down and all these studios are delaying a ton of stuff. Trust me, you can find a ton of videos of me talking about what's been delayed and what's been released on digital. I'll put the links below in the description, but let's talk about something a little bit more fun. You know, there are some movies that really just were in the middle, but then there are some that are seriously clear duds, and those are the 5 worst. Although I've seen some really awesome films, like I just said, and I really can't wait to talk to you all about them. So before I hop into all of that, if this is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James. Now if you're wondering who that is, that's me. And I love talking all about movies and TV shows, so you can catch me here talking about that each and every day. You're not going to want to miss out. Trust me, go ahead and hit the big red button below and tap on the bell right next to it just to stay up to date with anything new that drops. Go ahead and like this video, share with your friends, and in the comments below, let me know, do you agree with my top 5 and my worst 5? Or do you think there are some films that deserve to be number 1 or dead last? Because Lord knows my movie in dead last is just, it's really bad. Now, if you're curious about what I'm going to talk about for the rest of the week, I do plan on talking about Marvel Studios and whether or not they're actually going to postpone everything this year, and a couple of other different topics that I might get to. There was this weird rumor about Robert Downey Jr. possibly returning to the MCU. Might just drop a video and tell you why that's an awful idea. But regardless, stay tuned to the channel because I'm going to be dropping a lot of fun videos over the next few months because coronavirus got us stuck inside. Yeah, we're quarantining. Okay, so I'm debating on whether or not I should start with the 5 best or start with the 5 worst. But you know what they say, you save the best for last, right? So let's just dive into the 5 worst movies that I've seen so far in 2020. Starting at number 5, because I guess number 1 would be the worst film, right? Okay, so the least worst film of 2020. Man, this is not a good one. But it is a film that had probably the most promising foundation. It just had really bad execution. Underwater. Directed by William Eubank and starring Kristen Stewart. It's a movie about an oil rig team that is underwater, essentially mining for, I guess, oil or gas or whatever it might be, and a horrible problem arises. They kind of dig into this home of what seems to be this crazy creature, and I think they actually confirmed it to be, I forgot the name of it. It starts with a C and an H. Hold on, let's find it. Okay, I found it. I can't even pronounce it, you guys. Just, you know what I'm talking about. Chulutu? I don't even know how to say it, but anyway, the creature is very heavily inspired by that, and the director, I believe, confirmed that it is that creature. The only thing is, it doesn't make the movie any better. I think that the film did a really bad job at giving each character a sense of worth. Kristen Stewart's the only one they dove into, but even then, I felt that the entire movie didn't execute well in the horror department, and in the sci-fi department, it didn't really give me a lot of reason to stay with the story. And then when we finally get to the end of the film, it almost felt like this movie could have been spliced together 3 different ways, and sure, it battled with a lot of delays and production woes, but it didn't make for a good time at the theater. Some people were pleasantly surprised, but I fell on the other side of that, and I just didn't like the film at all. Okay, so the 4th worst movie of 2020 so far is The Call of the Wild, directed by Chris Saunders and starring Harrison Ford and a lot of CGI dogs, like a ton of them. Now, this is a 20th Century Studios film. It was the first movie I saw actually that had the different logo, so that was pretty cool. Now, as you know, Disney did take over 20th Century Studios and Fox's Searchlight division as well, and there was a lot of Disney influence in this, even though it wasn't a Disney movie. It felt very lighthearted, and I heard from some people that actually commented on my initial review that this movie actually, or I should say the book that this movie is based off of, is really dark. And this movie was anything but. There were some weird elements, I guess, that kids couldn't understand, but I didn't really care for it. There's a lot of cop-outs. The CGI dogs actually weren't the worst part of the movie, and for people complaining about it, I don't see how they could have done this with real dogs, but Harrison Ford was phoning it in, and the movie just was such a drag. Like, you saw everything coming from a mile away, and sometimes predictability is good. If you've been following this channel, you understand that I give a pass to predictability if the story and the characters are worth the ride, and The Call of the Wild is not worth it at all. So I guess you could say you can skip this film. There's really no reason to watch it unless you have nothing else to watch. Like, you've exhausted every option on Netflix, Hulu, and Disney+. But otherwise, you guys can just pass this one. Now, this next film actually is one that I would never want to watch ever again. It's a remake of a movie that apparently was much better than it, Downhill, directed by two people, actually, Nat Faxon and Jim Rash, and they both couldn't get this one right. It's a horrible film. I would rather watch The Call of the Wild 500 times than watch Downhill again. I mean, I've only seen Downhill once, and I can already tell you that this movie is not even worth it on an airplane. It's not worth a free rental, and if you have Showtime, HBO, anything free for the weekend, and this movie premieres, you just skip it, just go straight to your local news network, and you'll get even less of a headache there, because Will Ferrell and Julia Louis-Dreyfus are awful together. Like, their chemistry is just, it clashes. Julia Louis-Dreyfus does her best to really just kind of reel in the emotion, but Will Ferrell comes in and squanders every opportunity. There's no comedic element to this movie that made me even chuckle. There were a couple moments that shocked me, sure, but that doesn't necessarily mean the punchline was effective, because I feel like shock value and genuine humor kind of don't go hand in hand sometimes, and this movie's a prime example of that. Now, I had a lot of friends that asked me if I've watched the original film, because this is an Americanized remake, and they told me that the original film doesn't try too hard, and its awkwardness actually is a charm of the film. This movie is just not even awkward. It's clunky. It's a mess. The script is awful, and they only brought these two together, Will Ferrell and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, because of their names. They have zero chemistry, and there's not one scene in here that I can tell you is redeemable. Not one. But at least that dude from Game of Thrones is in there, and that's pretty cool. So the second worst film of 2020 so far is My Hindu Friend, directed by Hector Babenco and starring Willem Dafoe. Listen, okay. Now, I don't want to sound too harsh on a film that was supposed to come out in 2015. It had this weird run in the festival circuits, but it never actually got a limited or even wide release because the director unfortunately passed away, and this was his final film. That is actually loosely based on his life. Some people actually said Willem Dafoe is Hector Babenco. This is his story. The only issue is, it's just not a good film. It's very messy. You can tell the script is all over the place. And unfortunately, it is a very overly sexualized film. It doesn't really feel like a lot of the elements are justifying the means. I looked at the film and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to get myself a very introspective, deep look into the life of Willem Dafoe's character. The only issue is you get that for the first half of the movie, and the second half is just so long, so drawn out, and there were some scenes I kind of didn't skip over, but I turned my eyes a little bit because it was just a little too awkward to watch. It's kind of boring as well, so it's not a movie that you go to for an entertainment, or for entertainment, I should say. But it is a movie that I think you can confidently say that if you missed it for all the years leading up to this year, it's okay. Although I am very thankful that some members of the PR team and the marketing team that worked for this film's distribution company actually reached out to me and allowed me to see the movie early, so I appreciate that. And that's all I guess I could say that's good about the movie, is that the team working behind the distribution company is really nice. And the worst movie that I have seen so far in 2020 is one that got its run in theaters maybe for like a week before the coronavirus pandemic broke out, and then Universal Pictures decided to release it on video on demand alongside The Invisible Man. It is The Hunt, directed by Craig Zobel, and when I tell you a film tries so hard to be edgy and it doesn't work, this is the prime example. Now, I'm sure that this isn't going to be the worst film I see this year, and there are some people that like it. I understand the reasonings because it's so different and it's so zany, but it didn't work for me because it tried way too hard to be political. And I get that's the parody and the satire of the film, but a satire is supposed to be funny, and this was not funny at all. The funny thing is, actually, funny, Craig Zobel actually directed a really good episode of Westworld Season 2, Akane no Mai, I believe it's called, and it's the samurai world, the Edo time period episode of Season 2 that really worked for me, actually. There was a really cool vibe. You can tell Craig Zobel got the best out of the cast in that episode. And it's weird because I look at that and then I look at The Hunt and I think the quality is so different in both pieces. So they're two different mediums, but the quality, it's just the quality. It's Craig Zobel knowing that he can get this out of his actors. He can direct something so cool and fun. But the thing is, in The Hunt, it tries to be like elements of The Purge and then destroying the left and the right parties here in the United States, the Republicans and the Democrats. But it was just such a drag. Like, I wanted to get out of the theater. I was wondering when the end credits were going to roll. Of course, being press, I had to be in there, but there were two other people in the theater with me, and they both kind of liked it. But I walked out, and I thought that this is one of the worst, if not the worst movies I'm going to see this year. And the way movie theaters are shutting down and, the summer schedule is looking a little weird, this might actually be the worst movie I see in 2020. I hope that's not the case, but yeah, it's really awful. Okay, I'm coming down off that high. Let's go ahead and get into the 5 best movies of 2020 so far. Now, I'm really excited to talk about these films because some of them are not necessarily in theaters anymore and they are available to rent. And there's one that isn't in theaters yet because it got delayed indefinitely. That's one I cannot talk about. And that's actually the one that's on the list right now. So the 5th best movie of the year so far is Mulan, directed by Niki Caro, and it is starring... Okay, so you're probably going to see a weird cut that just happened. I cannot talk about this movie at all. I was getting a little excited because it's actually a film that I really wish I could talk about. The only thing is the embargo is now indefinitely on hold, and the entire film's release is on hold, so I'm not talking about the film. I'm just happy that I can include it on this list. Yeah, that's about it. Not saying anything else. I love the people that have worked to get me to see this movie already, and I respect them so much. Okay, well, enough of that. Let's just get to the 4th best movie of the year so far. Now, I've had a conversation with a good buddy of mine. He told me that Just Mercy is a film that is a 2019 release. While I can see his logic there because it was released in a limited run, both in New York and LA, for awards season and awards consideration, but it got screened for press in January of 2020, and even IMDb has its wide release, of course, January, I believe, 10th. And if it's this year that I saw the movie, I feel like it's fair to include it on the list. And I actually really do enjoy the film. And it's starring Michael B. Jordan and Jamie Foxx. I mean, those are two superstars. I mean, Michael B. Jordan is one of the best actors, not only of my generation, but of all time. I think the guy is such a talent. But Just Mercy is my 4th best movie of the year so far because it turns in some good performances. I really think that the movie is powerful, it's timely, and unfortunately there are some elements in that movie that I wish were already eradicated, like, the racism and stuff, and the injustice and the judicial system being unfair against minorities and people of color, and unfortunately that still exists, and that's awful. It also has one of the most powerful and memorable scenes of the year so far with Rob Morgan when he's on the electrical chair. Yep. Not going to say anything else. It not only got me mad, but it got me emotional. I think the movie just does a good job at that. It gets you angry, and if it does that, it succeeded, right? So it's the 4th best movie of the year so far. Okay, numero tres. Or, actually I'm going to stop trying to say 3 in every language that I know. Birds of Prey, directed by Cathy Yan, is such a fun film. It is the most fun movie that I have seen in the DC, films universe. It really doesn't do much to reach back and say, hey, remember, we're a part of this film universe. It mentions the Joker, and I think it mentions Bruce Wayne. It does mention Bruce Wayne at least once. But the thing is, the movie's really good on its own. I love Margot Robbie, and I think she's great as Harley Quinn. I don't know why the movie didn't perform as well. Maybe because it was called Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. Instead, it should have been called Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. That would have been much nicer. Actually, AMC went back and changed the title so that it could sell more tickets. I've never heard of that before in my life. But I think that Birds of Prey really got the short end of the stick with the worldwide or I should say the domestic box office, because it did make its budget back, if I'm not mistaken, for its worldwide gross. But Birds of Prey is such a fun movie. I mean, man, it's literally a comic book film. You could take the panels off a comic book and throw it on the screen, and this is such an accurate representation of what I come to expect from a rated R comic book movie. It's a great time. I wouldn't say it's a great time for the whole family because there are some strong elements, but I really do like that there's a female empowerment tone that is not slapping you in the face. Rather, it's playing under the film, and I think that there are some really good performances to be found in here. Okay, so this next movie the second best movie of 2020 so far that I've seen, actually was my number one for a while. I mean, not a while, but like a good month, I want to say, until I saw my number one. So before I jump ahead of myself, number two is The Way Back, directed by Gavin O'Connor, starring Ben Affleck. And let me tell you guys, this is one of the best performances Ben Affleck has put on. I really do think it might be his most emotional and visceral role, because it really takes a lot of what he's had to deal with and is still dealing with in his real life and throw it on the big screen. And when I was listening to the Real Blend podcast, which is a podcast you should really invest your time into, I love Sean O'Connell, Kevin McCarthy, Jake Hamilton. They do a great job at just getting the best out of these directors, writers, and just everyone that works in film. They get really good stories. So in particular, their interview with Gavin O'Connor revealed that, Gavin and Ben started shooting scenes for The Way Back not too long after he got out of rehab. So Ben leaves rehab and is shooting scenes about an alcoholic ex-basketball star. And that's really tough to do. And Ben handled it perfectly. He really is just so great in this movie. He deserves a lot of acclaim. I don't know why some people hated the movie. I can see why some people might not like it, because they didn't really dive too much into the sports element. They gave you a human side to the story. But I really enjoyed The Way Back, and I think it is actually available for rental, and you should watch it. It's a really, really good film. But it isn't my number one. My number one of 2020 so far is Time, directed by Garrett Bradley. And it actually is a documentary. It's one that I was afforded the chance to see a little bit earlier than most, thanks to the Miami Film Festival. They did a great job of just sending me the link for this, and I wouldn't have been able to see it without them, so thank you guys for all your hard work. But Time is really a movie that gets you in the mind of Fox Rich, and her husband, they robbed a bank. And this is all a true story. It uses a lot of home video and newly shot footage of Fox Rich and her family waiting for their husband and father to just come back to them and get out of this really unjust situation. Sure, they robbed the bank, but they gave her less time and they gave him way more time, I think, than he deserved. It's a good film. It's a really good documentary. It's very real, and I'm not gonna lie, I was really invested in. These are the kind of movies that make people who might just watch the news and then that's it, and talk about it with their friends. It might get them invested in certain subjects, and I think Garrett Bradley did a good job at kind of shifting my perspective on the incarcerations of people of color. Unfortunately, it's definitely weighed a little bit heavier on their backs than others, but I really think the film is fantastic. I didn't 5-star it, but it is the best movie of 2020 so far, because it's unlike anything I've seen. I've not seen a movie that has captivated me like this so far in 2020. So Time is my favorite, and The Hunt is my least favorite of 2020. You guys have to let me know what you think of my picks in the comments below. Sound off. Go off. Let me know, am I wrong or am I totally right? And don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and if you haven't already, hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to tap on the bell. I'm serious, man. If you tap on the bell, it makes it so much easier for you to follow Real James, and I'm gonna stop. But seriously, I love you guys, whether you support every day or just from afar. I'm thankful for you. We're almost at 900 subscribers. We're less than 30 away. That's fantastic. And if you haven't already, check in with me in the comments below and let me know how you're doing, because we're building a community here, and the real friends are just fantastic. I love you guys, and I'm really praying that you guys are safe and you're staying inside as much as possible. If you have to go to the pharmacy, or if you have to go to Publix or any sort of supermarket, you better put your Nikes on, run in and run out. Okay guys, enough of me. I'm gonna go back and watch Tiger King on Netflix, because that thing is addicting. So until next time, again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening.